Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Kennedy, and thank you for joining the Fashion and Sustainability Summit 2020 series. This is week 8 of 20 series, 20 weeks. The Fashion and Sustainability Summit is a collaboration and partnership of fashiondex.com and LIM College. I am a part of both, and welcome you in behalf of both organizations. We want to give a big thank you to the sponsors for the 2020 series. First off is Eco Life Yarn by Belle de Lorenz. Eco Life Yarn has been producing sustainable yarn with all renewable energy and no water for 60 years. So check them out, order from them, and say you found them through the summit. And also a big thank you to Kendor Textiles, who specializes in knit and woven, low toxicity and recycled fibers. Check them out. Tell them you found them at the Fashion and Sustainability Summit. And lastly, a big thanks to the Accessories Council, supporting fashion and accessory brands for many years. And they have a great awards coming up, the DEA Design Excellent Awards. So check that out. All attendees are muted today. So if you have a question, please type it in the Q&A box. And we will be responding to those in the last 25 to 30 minutes of today's panel. Speaking of today's panel, the title of it is a conversation on sustainable, on-demand, and place-based production. And really, we're going to dig into how to produce sustainably in the US, or just while thinking of the region that you're in. And we're so honored to have this amazing panel with us, which include Beth Esponnette of Unspun, Chung of MCM Enterprise, Jaclyn Jones of Clover and Cobbler, Ngozi Okaro of Custom Collaborative, and David Prentice of OnPoint Manufacturing. We're also truly honored to have an amazing moderator this week, Tara St. John of Resource New York and Study New York, as well as co-moderator Bettina Hobson, Supply Chain Pro and recent graduate from the MPS program at LIM College on Business of Fashion and Supply Chain Management. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take it away, Tara St. James.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara St. James. I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. My background is in fashion design, so I studied menswear design in Montreal because I'm Canadian. I moved to New York about 17 years ago to work for a variety of different fashion companies, and that is where I got my start in learning about sustainability, where I now focus a majority of my time. I started my collection Study New York 11 years ago, this month actually, and it is focused on 3 core tenets of sustainability. One is local production, that's here in the United States, primarily in New York City, garment district. 2 is responsible, sustainable, or recycled materials, and then 3 is zero waste pattern making and production. So I have since evolved to run a production facility for Pratt Institute here also in Brooklyn, which we closed down last year, and that transitioned into creating a material library called Resource Library, which functions as did function as a physical material sourcing library, which is now in my basement and works virtually, but also is a sustainability consultancy to help other brands find more responsible materials. And the brand itself is still focused on those 3 core tenets, but I try to educate the brands that I work with on all facets of sustainability, which we're going to talk a lot about today. And lastly, I feel like I'm missing something, but lastly, I teach a class on sustainable textile sourcing at FIT. I knew there was something I wasn't touching on. So that is my core focus in the industry. And I'm really excited about this panel today and having this conversation because I think it is going to be an invaluable resource to everybody attending to learn about new facets of sustainability and manufacturing and what the possibilities for the future are, because I truly believe that independent brands and new technology and business models are going to be the future of this industry and hopefully save not only the industry, but the planet as well. So I'm going to kick it off to David to introduce himself and talk a little bit about his business model.
Well, thank you, Tara and Andrea, both for having us here at OnPoint. I'm David Prentice, one of the founders of OnPoint Manufacturing. We are a on-demand clothing manufacturer. And that's kind of a new word that we coined because there historically wasn't anything on demand in this industry, which is why there's a duck truck of textiles going to a landfill every second or being burnt. So we're all about sustainability. We're trying to shake up this industry a little bit and change things. I say we have no minimums, but I guess if we manufacture anything, you have to have a minimum of one, right? So our minimum run is one garment. We literally manufacture a single garment at a time. Our mantra is sell one, make one, ship one, and then repeat as often as you can. So using this, we feel, and we're seeing firsthand with our clients that it has a true impact on the whole sustainability in this whole model. So clients will set up a garment in our system. They sell the garment through their brick and mortar, their website, the county fair, wherever. Turn around, place the order with us. We manufacture the garment in 3 to 5 days and ship it straight to their client and their packaging to their customers. So just a unique twist on manufacturing, and we're doing it 100% here in the U.S. And that's where we're building it. Happy to be here.
Thanks, David. I still think it's magic. Like you're at Hogwarts producing things in
we do have
2 hours.
Unicorns, but we keep them hidden.
Beth, do you want to take over next?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. Great to be here on this panel. I'm really impressed with everyone on it and excited to follow David because we really look up to OnPoint and what they're working on. So my name is Beth. My background's in clothing design and product design in general and sort of how that interfaces with manufacturing. And I started this company with a few other people a few years ago. The company's Unspun. And we really saw, similar to what David was talking about, we saw a mismatch between what is made in the industry and what people actually want to buy at the end of the day. So much gets wasted. You could argue half of it gets wasted straight to landfill. So we thought it's kind of weird because not even 50 years ago, we were making things as they were needed. So is there a way for us to go back to that? And being in Silicon Valley, of course, we kind of caught that bug and we were like, tech could probably do that. So we've started a fashion and tech company to get to that point where we can make product on demand and actually make it for someone, make it exactly as they want it. And so we've started with our brand Unspun, and what we do is we sell custom fit jeans to customers. So they get a body scan and will then choose their favorite kind of jean. They can choose different options on the jeans. And then we are able to run their body scan through algorithms we've created for different styles. So we can create any sort of style, and then you basically get that exact jean, but made only for you. It's completely unique to you. And this is something that is scalable, like it's automated by the computer. So we don't need pattern makers to do this. We've partnered with H&M and some other really large brands to start to bring this to market. And so we see this as being an exciting way for the industry to be more inclusive and also to avoid excess inventory. The longer term is to create a way to make on demand much quicker than what we do today. It takes us about 2 weeks to turn around a garment. For H&M, of course, they're doing it in about 5 days because they have that power. But we'd like to bring it down to a couple of hours. So we're building machinery that is not cut and sew. Instead, it's based on weaving technology. So we're trying to make it so that someone gets a scan and then a couple hours later they have their product, especially for them. So I'd love to talk more. I'll stop there. I'm sure we all have too much to talk about, but thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Beth. I've been following your business for several years now, since you launched, and find it fascinating. But what I find most fascinating about it, and I think this is going to come out on today's panel, is that both yourself and David are really looking at historical business models, so that making one, selling one, or making something that's custom to the person, which is how we used to make and sell clothes, decades ago, and have forgotten because we veered towards mass manufacturing. And now not only the most sustainable option, but the best one for customer satisfaction is what we did 50 years ago. So I think that's very telling. Jaclyn, I'm going to pass it over to you now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jaclyn Jones, and I'm the owner of Clover and Cobbler, which is a footwear factory based in Los Angeles. And we also have 3 in-house brands. So we're kind of on both sides of the industry. We get the manufacturing experience as well as, you know, retail and selling a brand as well, and the end consumer. So what's really unique about our factory is, again, we have no minimums. And so we, you know, make everything to order. And, you know, we have brands that come to us to make their shoes and order, you know, 10 pairs. They can order 100 pairs. They can order 3 pairs if they want. So it's really great because we make everything in-house. So we make our lasts, we make our insoles, we make our heels out of wood. So you can just make 1 pair and not have, you know, 10,000 plastic heel molds sitting around and eventually going to the dump. So it's really, really great and really, again, sustainable to be making things to order. And some of the things that we're really proud of here and wanting to kind of break the mold of the industry is that as a woman, I know in footwear how uncomfortable shoes have been and can be. And I was really sick of that. And so as a goal when I started Clover and Cobbler, the ability to make our own insoles and to make our lasts and affect how shoes fit was a really big deal to me. So we make really comfortable shoes that don't look like comfort shoes. And then additionally, of course, attacking mass manufacturing and bringing it down with no minimums, making smaller batches. And lastly, really integrating sustainability into our operations. So moving away from, you know, chemical heavy glues and going to water-based glues so that those chemicals aren't going back into the environment. And they're also not affecting our employees. And as you can see, I'm in our beautiful showroom. We have plants throughout the factory. It's a beautiful space. We highly value our employees and are all about the ethics of manufacturing. And it's not just about the products, it's also about the people. So, you know, really just letting people be in the factory, letting our brands be in the factory with our employees, knowing who's making their shoes. It's not some far-fetched factory across the world. And, you know, later you find out the situation that they're in is, you know, really just poor quality. So just really wanting to make that change in Los Angeles, US made, sustainable manufacturing.
Thanks, Jaclyn. I'm sure I'm not alone in feeling this way, but I think everybody wants to visit all of your factories, and I wish we could see operations everywhere and how they're going. Maybe next time we'll be able to do that. Chung, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Hi, I'm Chung. Our family is in this fashion business for over 30 years. We are a full service manufacturer located in Brooklyn, New York. I basically, ever since I was 8 years old, I've been in this business. You know, the first thing I do was working in a factory with my mom, you know, when we first came to America. So we basically learned how it works when a very young age. Then my family have worked from open a small shop and slowly grow into private label. Then we actually sell directly to retailers in the 80s and the 90s until in the 2000, early 2000, everything changes. So we just basically now are only cut and sew and consulting only. So the good thing about our business is we have experience working with everybody from beginning to end, you know, designers, showroom, retailers, you know, technical professional, non-professional. And in the old days, we are more traditional of manufacturer. We work with mostly with retailer and designer. We sell stuff like that. And recently, in the last 10, 15 years, we have converted into smaller batch production domestically. The bigger production we do overseas. But we see a trend that everybody's moving to faster fashion, you know, a smaller batch, quicker turnaround. And that is what we're doing right now for with a lot more designer than instead of working with big retailer and producing big lot, you know, and stuff like that that don't get sold and they mark down and they get wasted and stuff like that. So the good thing about us is we work with anybody. We really, have one piece minimum like everybody else, but that's from very beginning from, in the 80s, because we also work with, sample development, design. Anybody comes in, they're welcome to use one piece. If they do the line one piece, they sell 10,000 piece, then we produce a 10,000 piece for them. If they only have one and don't sell, they have to drop it off. It's one piece. There's no hard feeling for us. So basically, we understand, how the market have changed, and we are trying to adapt to it as time goes by with technology, with skill, with management and stuff like that.
Great. And I think that is a perfect transition to Ngozi, who is here in New York as well, and can talk a little bit more about how your business has evolved in the last few years.
Thanks so much, Tara, for asking the question. And I'm really excited to be here. One, to hear about like these companies that I didn't know about, and two, to be like in such good company with people who really care about sustainability and local economies. And so I just want to say that, like, full disclosure, Tara has been a great like volunteer advisor to us. Andrea has bought our products. So I'm really happy to be here with them and everybody else today. So I lead Custom Collaborative, a nonprofit social enterprise. We're in the business of providing opportunity and entry into the fashion industry for women from low income and immigrant communities. That plays out in three ways. We have a training program. Women meet 14 weeks, 30 hours a week, learn to design, sew, and sell sustainable fashion, also learn personal finance and business finance. Each graduates with a business plan. We have a business incubator where we're doing some small batch production, again, with a minimum of one, a little bit of pattern making and consulting around sustainability. And we've recently launched our first employee-owned cooperative. So 7 women have started their own production cooperative. And I'm just like super excited from them. They've all come through our programs. And that is something that we want to continue to do, both develop new cooperatives and then also convert existing fashion businesses into cooperatively owned businesses in order to, one, revitalize the industry and regenerate it, right? We're working with people, they're learning today's skills. We want to train them on the most in-demand skills, so that will include like what Unspun is doing and Clover and Cobbler and OnPoint. And we really, in addition to that, train them to be leaders and to stand up for themselves, and which is really, I think, part of the part of sustainable fashion that we don't talk about as much, but really the human rights aspects are people being paid fairly, legally. I'm glad that right now SB 1399 is, going through the California legislature. Who knows, maybe it's been signed by now, but these are the things that are really important as we think about planet, to also think about people. And so that is really the core of what Custom Collaborative is about. So thank you.
This is so interesting, and I'm so excited to have you all on the panel. And I know this conversation could go on for hours and hours, and I'm very conscious of time. So the first question I'm going to put out to all of you is actually going to be a 2-part question. Feel free to answer just one or both parts. And I don't want this to be COVID related, because I know that we're all having struggles and different curveballs thrown our way in times of COVID, but this is really looking at the last year or so of your business. What challenges have you seen that are really consistent? And they could be internal challenges within your own supply chain or manufacturing or business model, or, and I always like this one, challenges that you're seeing that are being brought to you by your customers, by the designers you're working with, or by the people that are in your entourage. And then the second part of this question is, how are those challenges evolving into opportunities for the future? How are you seeing them as possible solutions for innovation or diversity or new business models, new systems, and of course, sustainability? And I'm happy to rephrase the question if anyone wants to get a better view, but I think just really breaking it down to what challenges do you have now, and then what opportunities are you looking at in the future? And I will throw this out to anybody who wants to start. And I'll name names if nobody doesn't.
I will hop in then before you call me out. You know, what we've seen the last year, challenge-wise, is to meet demand of the fashion as the supply chain has really changed. People are realizing that it is broken. It has been broken for a long time, and you can't get things out of the Orient right now. You can't get stuff from China, and everyone's kind of looking around to the U.S. for manufacturing and forgetting that we sent it all away by choice in the 70s and 80s and trying to bring it back. So we were able to pivot the company in March. There's still this one COVID thing in there, and with the demand for masks and no one could get them, we had material on the floor that we use for some white label products that's antimicrobial, and we were able to pivot over the course of 36 hours. We designed a mask, prototyped it, finalized it, cut the first table, and got the first purchase order in 36 hours. And that's kind of where I think manufacturing's got to go to. And you can't do that if you're manufacturing in China. You've got to be able to react locally to do that. Some great conversation with Bhutan this last week, because they've realized that internally and they want to go into on-demand manufacturing there. So we were able to load the plant up with masks and then gowns, and then fashion has turned back. So if we have a challenge today, it's sewers, trying to find sewers we're constantly hiring. That's our Achilles heel if there is one. And you know, grandma quit teaching the grandkid how to sew years ago. And so we're trying to resurrect that, and we've done some things with Singer to get sewing machines out there. So that's the challenge, constant finding sewers. And as we look for new plants, we need sewers.
Ngozi or Chung, I feel like you both have something to contribute to that statement.
We can send you sewers, no problem. So I would say in answer to that question, so yes, COVID, you know, struck and changed everything. We were making basically 2 and 3 things at a time from dead stock. And when COVID came, we were like, okay, so these ladies have all been laid off from whatever job they were doing. They need income. And so we became, you know, also a mask making business, fashion masks, not antimicrobial, but still mask nonetheless. So I would say though, it took us more than 36 hours, but that was one thing, that was one crisis. I think that the crisis around racial justice is what has really been, I think, a turning point, eye-opening, and an opportunity, because we work with companies to, you know, who want to hire women who've come through our programs or have them as interns, any number of things. And we realized that ourselves, we were not just diverse, but also an inclusive and an equitable workplace. And we strive to do that, and we're constantly doing the work. But the places where we were thinking about sending folks maybe hadn't done the same work. And so people may be nice, but nice doesn't make for a workspace that we want to send people to. So really, we've had to look and say, well, at our core, what do we need to do differently? And so one of the things that we're doing is anti-racism training for the employers and the partners who we're working with, because, like, you know, people don't just get the knowledge from thin air, but again, we want to make sure that we're helping to educate the industry and providing a stable and fair workspace so everybody can get the most out of the experience. So that's really been something for us that we've had to think about, and we're providing some solutions.
If I can jump in on that, because I do have a follow-up for you, Ngozi. I think that's commendable, and knowing all the work that you do every day, how you can manage to fit in this additional scope of education is beyond me, but then also know that David has elves that is helping him. So maybe you can get some of them and you can like cross. Yeah. But I do have a question for you, seriously. Where do you think the responsibility for that education should come from in the future? Because I don't think it should be from manufacturers like yourself. there needs to be more of a holistic approach on the industry in whole. Do you have an idea of what the opportunity is there for businesses and brands to get that work done and not have to rely on the manufacturers who are already overstrapped and overworked?
That's a really good point, and it is a lot. And unfortunately, I don't have those L's. I'm going to be in contact with Dave to try to get them. Right now, I just have a husband who gives me lunch and wine occasionally. But I think that there are groups who are talking about this and who are helping to start the conversations and develop the capacity. So yes, Custom Collaborative is doing this. We've got a couple of brands who want to pay us to do this consultancy with them. There are others who may not necessarily be in manufacturing, but like Fashion for All Foundation, Sustainable Brooklyn, other organizations who are talking about and working towards economic, racial, and environmental justice. And so I think it's just incumbent on the brands to say, well, this is something that's really important. And so we're going to do more than, place a black square and maybe give $1,000, that we were really going to do the work internally and figure out how to do it, know what we don't know, and then hire somebody to come in and help us. But again, it's a commitment from the top.
Who wants to go next with big challenges they've seen and opportunities that have arisen from them?
I'd be happy to jump in. So we've been seeing, I'm sure a lot of you have been seeing as well, just an overload of inventory, excess inventory in other, not necessarily your brands, of course, because you're all making to order, but with brands and the way things have always been done, they're just drowning at this point. They were drowning before COVID, and now that the unpredictable kind of happened, they're absolutely drowning in it. So there's a lot of opportunity in now reaching out to these brands and saying, like, look, this thing that you've been avoiding this whole time, this really is a problem. And so they're actually, I think typically it's hard to look further ahead. So they're now thinking, okay, how can we remanufacture? How can we take this excess inventory that we have and make it something that's worthwhile? But then that kind of gets into the same problem again, where you're just trying to make something that didn't work out and you'll make it into something else. But how can you predict the future? I think COVID really brought that out, that it's all a guessing game in the industry, and that's the way it's been for a really long time. So I'm hoping that's shifting mindsets. It feels like it is. It's not changing as quickly as we'd like it to. A lot of the partners that we talk to, they want to take really baby steps. Like how can Unspun help them like analyze their fit right now, or help them make recommendations for customers. It's not necessarily taking that plunge into actually getting custom product made on demand. And it's hard. They have so many stakeholders and so much pressure from all sides, but I'm hopeful that longer term, they will be willing to take that plunge. So in the meantime, our challenge is how can we help them get there? How can we take those baby steps with them? Because I mean, H&M gets a really bad rap in the industry, but they're risk taking, and they absolutely jumped into this project with us and went all the way, and it's going so well. So I'm hopeful that other brands will be able to do that as well. And some other things that we're seeing are that brands they're noticing that consumers really, they want transparency. They want to know what's happening behind the scenes, and they're just getting smarter about what questions to ask. And so greenwashing is definitely still a thing, and it still works, unfortunately, but it's moving very rapidly, and they know it. So it's a good thing for all of us, since we are really making things the right way. And I would say the last thing that we're kind of riding is this digital front, things moving digital, things moving, remote. So because we are a software and hardware company, mostly the software part is the easier part in this sense. We are able to work very remotely, where like our first launch with H&M is in Stockholm. So consumers will be getting body scans there. They'll be sent to us here in San Francisco, goes through our computer here and gets sent back to their factories in Europe and Asia. So it's a very seamless sort of thing. So yeah, lots of challenges, lots of opportunities, kind of a mess, but I think it will sort itself out very soon.
I'm really glad you brought up the topic of dead stock, because you guesstimated earlier in the panel that close to 50% of inventory is unsold, and I think that's fairly accurate. Last count, I believe the United States has somewhere around $5 billion worth of unsold inventory in warehouses, which is really depressing. Even more depressing, and the reason why I decided to focus on textiles is that close to 50% of all textiles is wasted even before it gets made into finished garments. And nobody really talks about that because it's the unseen part of the production process, and it's not found in garbage bags on the side of the street, you know, in front of big mass brands. Chung, I'm curious, and I'm gonna throw this question at you, but you've been working for a long time in this industry and have seen several shifts, especially in manufacturing in New York. Do you see a demand from the designers that are coming to you for more transparency and sustainability? And how are you addressing that? Or what are they asking for from you when they, and at first I asked, do you see that? But I know you probably do. And I think a lot of people are asking for it. And what are they asking for specifically? And how are you engaging with them in that conversation?
Yeah, I do see a lot of the changes in the recent years, you know, ever since 2012, I mean, after, you know, what happened in Bangladesh, people are more conscious of, you know, how this industry works, you know. So one of the things that everybody want to know is, you know, how we treat workers, sustainability, how transparent is the business. And that's basically the subject that everybody asks right now. You know, they want to know how we operate and all the industry operate. Okay, so basically we have to be very transparent. We would like to, you know, when a new client comes in, we will show them our facility, show them how we work, how we're different, explain to them, you know, what other people do that we don't do, or what we do we don't do. And that's basically, they just want to know more about the process, okay? And of course, in the end, it's all about business, it's about numbers, and those is easily taken care of if they first have to understand. And that's what we do best at this moment. You know, in the old days, it's all about numbers and monies, you know, and that's what we focus on. But as time goes by, we are more focused on, you know, managing work, you know, worker management, how to, you know, bring what we can bring to the customer, you know, how we attend to their needs. Because, you know, before we only need to work with 2 or 3 clients, and that's enough. They're providing enough work, enough, you know, revenue for us for the whole year. Now we're working at any given time, at any given month, 50 to 100 different designers, you know, that have changed a lot. So we, you know, one of the things that we do well is being able to adapt. So like now with the pandemic, there's a lot of uncertainty, you know, and a lot of people are not prepared. So when this happened, you know, a lot of my other associate that's in the industry that also, they're not prepared because they didn't see this coming. We were a little bit more fortunate because, you know, we have Thai in Asia and Hong Kong and China and stuff. And we see this coming way before everybody, you know, even pay attention to it, because we got, you know, information from our colleague from overseas. So one of the things, just to give you an example is, you know, we were able to donate over 80,000 masks, surgical masks, when nobody could get masks, because we know it way beforehand they will need it. So we bought it before February came. So when everybody don't have anything, we donated a lot of masks. And we adapt to the situation when nobody want to work, okay? And we figure a way to, you know, still produce, okay? With like taking worker, you know, cater them to, you know, drive them to work, to help because we are producing PPE product for the city, for hospital and stuff like that. So we learn to adapt to the situation. Okay, so a lot of time people just have to realize, this economy, this industry is ever changing. You just have to be prepared, to see what's coming, be able to adapt to it, and trying to be more creative, to solving problem. And that's what we do.
Yeah, and I think I'm glad you said that, because I think adaptability and flexibility and the ability to be resilient and pivot is the common thread that you all have, and is what is going to perhaps save this industry. Jaclyn, 2 more minutes before we go to audience questions, but I want to give you some time to talk about this and either answer this question or talk about what Chung is mentioned as far as pricing and working with a lot of different customers. But I'll leave it to you of what you want to address here.
Yeah, I mean, he touched on some major challenges. Of course, working with a lot more clients is a lot more time consuming. And doing all of that also here in the US, it costs a lot more because, minimum wage is getting really high and it's changing every 6 months here in LA. So definitely all things to keep considering and keep adapting with. And I think we find that challenge a lot when we have some bigger brands come to us and they're interested in shifting their production from overseas to here, either, completely or, basically building their portfolio and having a local option. And they're coming to us expecting prices, the same prices as overseas. And the same, I just am dreaming of a purple shoe and you're gonna, make it. And, it doesn't work the same here. So kind of communicating that there are some changes and it works a little bit differently here, but here are all the benefits. You're not waiting the major timelines to ship everything. You don't have to order 6 months to a year in advance. We're making on demand. You can get your product in a month to 2 months. That's, and that's for a large order. So trying to explain the benefits of, those items. No miscommunication. You can physically come into the factory and see where your shoes are on the line. You can touch and feel it and see, yes, this is exactly what I want, or hey, this wood heel stain, let's make it a shade darker, So that tangibility and ability to just be involved in your product in the manufacturing process, to me, when I started my brand, that was, worth it, it costing a little bit more.
Yeah, and then when you factor in the cost of shipping from overseas, as well as all this extra product that you can't sell, really at the end of the day, is it really that much more expensive to be producing domestically? And that's a bigger question.
Yeah. Right. And the time spent on communicating or miscommunicating overseas. And I just also want to touch on, we also kind of talked about how the end consumer is a lot more aware, socially aware with, diversity and Black Lives Matter movement, as well as sustainability, and wanting to know more about how the products they're buying are made. And we see that both as the brand and as the manufacturer, and brands coming to us and wanting to be able to share that with their end customer.
Great. Bettina, I believe we have some audience questions. Is that right? And I'm going to pass it on to you to...
Yes, but I believe David was going to say something before I jump in. I think he had a final thought.
Just following up on Tara's, yeah, well, thank you. And that's the story about U.S. manufacturing. And when you look at it, just what you shared, you mentioned $5 billion in unwanted clothing in U.S. In warehouses. It's the cost of goods sold, not the cost of the good. And that's what you've got to look at. And that's what consumers have got to start evaluation. I mean, it's the
total cost of production for sure.
Yeah.
But there's such a lack of transparency in the industry from the manufacturing to the final consumer right now that cost of good is is not even recognizable any longer. It may have been 50 years ago, but it isn't anymore. And we need to go back to that place where they really understand how much it costs to make something and the true cost of manufacturing, whether it's domestically or overseas, especially with regards to human labor, you know. And I joke about your elves, David, but I know that you have very well paid and well trained sewers. And I think there's a lack of understanding that it's still human beings that are sewing our clothes, almost all of them. And Ngozi, you're doing great work in communicating this, but most people don't, you know, the last 50 years, we've lost that ability to really understand it.
I think it's because it's of a distance away. So when we have folks that aren't making their own clothes, most of us don't. I mean, my mother's a seamstress, but it's not a common thing. So I think when we have people removed from the process, it's hard to know if it's happening somewhere in a cloud, let's say.
I also think, and I hate to be negative here, and I'm going to be a little bit of a downer, but I also think that when you're looking at a t-shirt in a store that costs $4.99, you can't really justify how a human person, and in fact, up to 80 people have touched that garment in its lifespan before it got to you at fair wages, and still it costs less than a cappuccino, at least in New York anyway. But so, you know, I think we are willingly disregarding the true cost of it because we don't want to accept that people were not paid a fair wage across the entire supply chain.
Great points. Hi, everyone. I didn't introduce myself. My name is Bettina. I'm a recent LIM college graduate. And I'm a supply chain pro by day in manufacturing. So these are all very causes near and dear to my heart. I work in manufacturing, so I definitely understand a lot of what you're saying. And thank you to all of the panelists. I have quite a few questions actually. And we had a question about what's one thing, and some of you have talked about this, what's one thing that a brand watching, maybe a smaller brand, should know about shifting production to the US that maybe you haven't mentioned? Perhaps it's each state that has incentives for them to shift, or just ways to address the pain points of shifting over from overseas production to on-demand production here in the U.S.
We've got several clients that are based in the UK, Austria, Italy, that we're manufacturing goods and services for, that originally looked at us just to deliver to the US, manufacture their selling product in the US instead of shipping it over, use an on-demand model to fulfill orders in the US. And that's how every relationship started. And as it transgresses and moves on, they start to realize that whole cost of goods sold model and how much inventory and how much capital is on hangars in their facilities. And several of them have literally are moving to a complete on-demand model. We're making product and shipping it back around the world now. It's easy. Call us, right, Chung?
Well, it really depends. I ship domestically and I ship internationally. So my view is a little bit different. If you ship bulk, of course, you'll be able to save. But if you ship small packages, that add into the cost, and that really sometimes it's actually more than what the product is worth, the shipping alone. So my recommendation, if you want to talk about logistics and talk about supply chain, so the way I see it in the future is all going to be about technology, how people incorporate that technology to make it to be able to purchase their product locally, so they don't have to ship it very far and produce it locally. I do have a vision of what the future look like. After this happened, is in the future, everybody going to share information and resources. Okay. Because that's the only way to really could be able to save in the long term, because we just have the populations keep growing. You can't stop that. And we keep consuming more. And this is why we're talking about sustainability, because there's more people, using more resources that the earth cannot produce. Okay, so you're gonna get to a point if you really want to look at what the future look like. They're gonna be like, there's not enough resources for everybody, and everybody gonna either kill each other to get it, or they're gonna share. So I like to think about the good sides of what's gonna happen. People have to learn to share. Look at all the model of different business that in the last 10 years have come up. Like Uber, like Airbnb. They're all about sharing. Okay, so if
Collaboration is very important.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I mean, basically sharing resources. So my vision of the future, what it looks like is going to be order, buy on demand, make to order. Okay. People share information like design development resource locally where is connected with technology. Example. Okay. If people gonna a designer design, okay? They're gonna put it on a platform will store that information. Anybody that want to buy the designer's design, they could basically download it to a printer or a scanner and be able to knit it right there, like 3D knitting, okay? Unfortunately, nobody really, put enough resource in that technology because I think that's the game changer for me. Because
there's resources out there.
Well, but they're not focusing on it because there's limitation to 3D knitting, which is fully fashion. Think about why people is not doing it. But if you have machines and technology that could use any fiber, okay, to knit anything in higher quality, faster. Currently, it takes about 3-5 hours to knit, a top, okay. Imagine, you could do that quicker with technology as they evolve, and people just say, I like this. I shop online instead of going to a mall. Or even if you go to a mall, they work with a designer, or in a shop, right? And they will, they'll help them, style them, choose the fabric, the material, and just press a button. They print this stuff right there for them. Okay, knit it together within a couple
Chung,
hours.
I appreciate your delivery, and you are great, but I apologize. We have to get to a few more questions. I could talk about it for hours and listen to you explain it, but I apologize.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yes, please, Jaclyn.
Hidden cost to shipping overseas is the carbon footprint. I mean, bottom line, you are just adding to global warming, and we're talking about sustainability here in this panel, and shipping overseas. You got to think about all the trucking to get to the port if it's going on a plane or a ship, and then you got trucking again or trains. It's just, it adds up, and the different packaging, different paperwork, all of it just keeps going and going.
Those are great hidden costs.
Sorry, Bettina. We essentially need versions of all of you in all major markets around the world in order to reduce that carbon footprint and have localized place-based manufacturing everywhere.
We're working on it.
Nice. I have a question. I believe it was Beth, you asked, you mentioned this, that 50% of inventory remains unsold, and is this inventory of manufactured goods, all manufactured goods, or specifically textiles? I'm not sure if Tara, you brought that up, or if Beth, that was something you brought in your introduction.
Okay, so I'll elaborate a little bit. So last year, 2019, about 115 billion garments were made in the world, and before then it was around 100. I don't know what happened this year. We'll see where that ends up, but you can assume around 100 billion garments were made, and about 60% by the end of the year. So 60% of what's made within a year will go to landfill. So probably, I mean, it's really hard to find the numbers because everyone hides them, but it's somewhere between 30 and 40% of the garments that are made don't get sold. And then the rest of that to make up to 60% is just people buying not necessarily what they want, or they ordered it online and it was too inconvenient to send it back, or they did send it back and then the retailer decided not to put it back on the floor because it's more expensive to do that. A lot of these groups have third parties that just take them back and trash them. So because it's cheaper to just trash something than to put it back on the shelf. So yeah, a lot of different things, but I do know those numbers, specifically that number from McKinsey.
I back you. I just literally read McKinsey just released something about 2 hours before we went live that there was a new report about fashion and the climate change, and yeah, that's pretty spot on.
And just to elaborate on that, Bettina, because you asked about textiles, it's approximately the same percentage that's going to waste on the textile level, so be pre-manufacturing. We look at efficient patterns as around 15%, so 1.5, but in fact, that's not taking into account all the leftover materials or all the unsold textiles that are manufactured every year. So on a global scale, close to 50 to 60% of textiles are also wasted. They don't all necessarily go straight to landfill. The cut fabrics do, but a lot of it just goes into a warehouse and is sitting dormant for a long time, which is why dead stock is so important as a resource as well.
Right. We do see that designers are starting to try to pull out their dead stock out of the warehouse, especially in this challenging times, to try to design from that. I think Louis Vuitton, I don't mean to call out names, but I think they just had a spring collection with dead stock as that. Ngozi, I believe you said you did something with dead stock as well in your organization, right? How do you try to tackle that?
Yeah, so Custom Collaborative, everything that we make except for our African prints are from dead stock. So this top that I'm wearing today is a silk chiffon that was dead stock. The top that I'm wearing under it is a silk charmeuse that was dead stock. And so again, that's why when we make things, we just make a few things. They're limited edition because we're reliant on the fabrics that we get donated. In addition to making things in our training program, everything that the women learn and use in the training program is dead stock. So we don't buy muslin. We just, use whatever fabric that we have that's the proper weight and grain to teach on. I think that, things go to dead stock. They're dead stock for multiple reasons. They're overstock. Somebody didn't like the color of the dye, but then it also means like, well, is it the right customer? So for whatever reason that this silk was throwaway, it's valuable for us. And so then next week, people are going to go on our website and see it and say like, oh, I really like this. So it's part of it is knowing your customer and not just making anything and everything and throwing it at the wall to see who buys it.
It takes 2 yards to make a dress. We push a ton of dead stock to all of our clients for them to furnish. We don't need 1,000 yards to make one garment. We need 2. So dead stock, it really opens the doors to utilize that. And we did the same thing with some designers during this tragedy, converting some of their dead stock into masks. Billy Reed had some amazing fabric I saw at the plant last week. Like, oh my gosh, what are we making out of this? I mean, a fine Italian blend. It was like masks, it's dead stock. So yeah.
Right, and we're gonna wear masks for a while, so why not have them be fashionable, right? So this is a silk mask. I think it's supposedly impractical, but a lot of fashion is impractical. So, people will wear it and buy it.
Oh, I like it to match my outfit, so I'm with you. Oh, we're almost out of time, Tara. I should turn that back over to you, and thank you everyone for answering my questions, or audience questions.
Yeah. Thank you, Bettina. This has been such an enlightening conversation. I wish it could go on for hours and hours. I'm going to throw one last question to everybody. It's going to be a quick fire question, so if you can keep it to 1 minute answers. And it's multiple choice question. So you have question A is, how are you staying optimistic during these dire times, and what is really encouraging for you looking forward? Or option B is a call to action for the people who are listening. What can they do immediately right now to make a change in their businesses or in their consumption or in their daily lives to improve their impact on the environment and on the people around them? David, you're unmuted, so you're going first.
Hop in and I'll hit my timer real quick. Optimistic, I'm incredibly optimistic as people are starting to look to U.S. fashion and all this waste and want that we've talked about. Nothing's better to fix that than on-demand manufacturing. Sell one, then make it. That's sustainable. the call to action, you mentioned transparency earlier, and this is a beautiful story. We've got a client named Cobbler in the press a lot lately, and they know the origin of all their materials, their textiles. They actually created an individual unique QR code that is sewn inside every garment. When their customer gets it, they can scan the code. They can learn about the textile, the fabric, where it came from, where it was manufactured. They encourage them when the client's done with the garment to not pitch it, but to send it back to them. They'll repurpose it or resell it in another method. And you can actually continue to scan and follow the whole life of the garment through that QR code in the garment once you scan it in your phone. So the original purchase can watch that garment live for, hopefully for years and years and years.
That's a great brand story.
Who wants to go next? Beth.
Great. Okay. Yeah, we are definitely optimistic. I mean, look how existential this COVID became for the world, and it just completely halted everyone and then shook us all into action. And I think, climate change is going to be even more existential, which in itself is a very depressing thought. But I think that when we all realize that, we're really going to get everything in order, and we're going to be able to make things, to change them in the right direction. And I think I'm just gonna slide in a CTA. If we can all just collaborate more collaboration, I think that's going to be what makes this all possible. So I'm really excited to see a lot of these questions today. They're all about, can I get the contact information for these people? And so collaboration, I think, is going to be key.
I'll go ahead and jump in next. So I think, again, to reiterate what you both said, is collaboration 100%, and sharing what we're learning and different ways to be more sustainable. So for example, for our Californians brand, we found a manufacturer here in Los Angeles for packaging. So all of our packaging is made from 100% recycled cardboard and uses only water-based inks, and then so that makes it 100% recyclable. So, and they're based in Los Angeles. So our boxes are really close to where we manufacture, we box them, and then it goes out to the customer. But the next thing to think about is, okay, that's our packaging. What about it going to each customer, like individual online customer? And I think I've read a few articles about during the pandemic, when people aren't shopping at stores, online sales have increased. And so there's a lot bigger carbon footprint of, UPS and FedEx shipping individual packages. So something to consider going forward on, kind of how we continue to react to things, but small steps, tackle one thing at a time. Packaging, great. Now we can move on to the next thing. How do we do, X, Y, and Z? So small steps and collaboration.
Totally agree. Who wants to go next?
So I will say, I'm going to answer what's giving me hope. And so I constantly get hope from the women who are in our programs. They've come from 22 different countries, and even through these current crises, they have like optimism, and they just keep going through and doing the work and encouraging each other and testing things out and stretching their brains and their abilities. And so that's really keeps me going, and that really gives me hope that when we center these women in the industry, and then when they're leading it, that things will be a lot better in fashion than they are now.
Chung, what's keeping you optimistic these days, or what one call to action would you like to give out to everybody who's listening?
I am a optimistic person. I don't like to be negative, so but I'm trying to keep it short. Okay, basically, uncertainty going forward. Everybody knows there's a lot of uncertainty going forward, but there's also a lot of opportunity. People just need to learn to be able to spot opportunity, take action, test the theory, and build on it, then learn from the mistake, and you will grow. Exactly what we did during this pandemic. Most people, our competitor, they shrink. We grew because we know what to expect, and we, instead of giving up and doom and gloom, you see what's available, trying to, like I said, spot opportunity, and trying to find solution. If you can solve the solution, you move forward.
I have to say, all of you are making me really optimistic. If I was starting my brand now versus 10 years ago, it would be a completely different story, even though I'm grateful I'm not starting from scratch right now. But I am so grateful that you all exist in this landscape of sustainability. And I'm really optimistic about the future of the fashion industry being dominated by independent, forward-thinking, and resilient brands who want to make a change in the world and not just make more product. And thank you to Andrea for putting this together and Fashion Dex. I think this kind of platform is really important, and to be engaged, even though we can't move around the world and meet each other in person. I think this is really, really important, even though maybe we're all getting a little Zoom fatigue.
Thanks so much, Tara, and thank you all. I think that it's really important to understand some of the points that were made today, you know, in avoiding all that excess inventory. We avoid items going to landfill. We avoid the reverse logistics. We avoid warehousing and shelving as much. There are just so many perks. And I really like that you talked about like the historical business models and looking back before we move forward. I did want to address one question that never got responded to, which was by Kimberly about costing and markups. And we have a new book on apparel costing with a whole chapter on how to load sustainability onto your cost sheet and allowing sustainability to be a line item. So check it out. I had to plug ourselves for a moment. I hope you don't mind.
That's great. I couldn't get to that question. Thanks, Andrea.
Sure, and thanks, Bettina. So I want to thank you all. So thanks, Beth, Chung, Jaclyn, Ngozi, David, Tara St. James, and Bettina Hobson for today's panel and for spending your time and sharing your knowledge with all of us at the Fashion and Sustainability Summit. Again, a really big thank you to Kendor Textiles, the Accessories Council, and Eco Life Yarn, and Belle de Lorenz, their home mill, and LIM College. Check it out if you want to learn business, fashion, and sustainability, fashiondex.com. We have that apparel costing book as well as books on contractors and sustainable production. And then please join us next week where we're going to talk about circularity and closed loop materials. We've got Aljex, we have Belle de Lorenz, we have Textile Exchange, we have Ciclo Intrinsic, Fatima Anwar of Ethical and Sustainable Sourcing will be with us, and Austin Sierra co-moderating. And the following waste, again, we're going to stick with circularity and really talk about solutions for fashion waste. And so we've got Jess from Fab Scrap, Kathleen from BRA, Rich from Elevate, and Tara Maurice, who will be moderating. So with that, we thank you so much for joining us. I wish you a sustainable, low impact, and future thinking week. And thanks again.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Hi, Mom.